Troy, how you doing today?
Yeah, I'm great, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
I'm pumped for this episode because you and I talked last week, and it's a bummer we didn't get a lot of that on the record because I think a lot of the listeners and a lot of owners would have enjoyed that. So we're going to try and recreate some of the rallying back and forth that we had.
Sure.
And just as I kind of tee it up, I came across your 3-part series in Axial about your growth strategy and the crazy things that you've gone through. And so I'm excited to hear kind of the inner workings of that. But so for the listeners who haven't had the pleasure of reading that article, which we'll link to, let's take it back, Troy, and how you kind of were alluding to it before we got on the show, but how did you become an entrepreneur, and what got you the bug?
Sure. Yeah. So I think probably like maybe many of your listeners, the desire to, do it better than where they were working. If some of the big corporations, they just suck the soul right out of the inner human being, right? And so, when you say I'm just tired of being in a cubicle, I'm tired of being a number in a big corporation, or I'm tired of working so hard to have at the end of the day my work, my effort distilled down to mostly nothing from the management team above me, the boss, the owner, the whatever, right? So you just go, look, man. The human spirit wants to create, wants to develop, wants to grow, wants to build things. I'm a builder. Many men are builders. Many women are builders. But, you want to build something, and you go into someone's business, whether you work for Ford Motor Company or Hewlett Packard, or you work for Dane Manufacturing. You want to build something, and you want your life to, your work, or the culmination of your year's worth of work. And then as you're there for several years to be a part of that, growth and building of something. Most everybody, it's the human condition, right? You want to grow, you want to make an impact. So I'd been in a couple of big companies, and that just was not fitting with my soul very well. And the last company I was in, I was making a significant contribution, because one person can make a huge contribution. And, the owner would change his presidents, like you and I would buy a new pair of Allen Edmonds shoes and every year. And he, another pair, I should say, every year. And he would change presidents every year. So I've been promoted 4 times, was running a big part of his factory, making him a lot of money. And, the president came in one day, and all of a sudden I was out of a job. So I said, that's it. I'm not going back to work for the man. You can't make me. So I had a little saying, that I had inside my front office or my little tiny office, my 10 by 12. It said, get black or you're going back, and that meant like, you better get your little startup company profitable, or you're going back to work for the man, right? So get black or you're going back. And so not that working for the man is prison, but, everybody on your podcast
I think they kind of would probably agree.
You want to be in your own ship. You want to be captain of your own ship and sailing, plotting the course, and then deciding, who you're going to bring with you on the ship and set sail, right? And so, yeah, that was for me kind of the beginning of it in 1990, 96. So 22, 23 years ago now. So started that little company, grew that from nothing to just over $500,000. And then the Y2K recession came along. Some of your listeners remember that when their dad would talk about it. Some of them lived through it. And then, my business was going to make it, but it wasn't going to be the same size on the other side of that recession. So I said, time to grow. You got to get, so then you get the next saying, which is, get big or go home, right? So I had to get bigger. And many, many companies, if you start to study it and really take a look at it and try to understand, our government loves statistics, and they love to track, the census.gov site and irs.gov site have tons of metrics out there. If you look at it, the evening news will always confuse us. There's 28 million small businesses in America, or 29 million or 32 million. I always kind of like to define small businesses as, you got FICA, you got 1 or more employees you're paying FICA taxes for, then you're an employer. There are about 5 million employers in America. Of the employers, and I'm not picking on anybody that's working on their house, that makes more money than me. Really, I'm not. I'm simply talking about, from my perspective, I've always been an employer. And so from an employer, about 5 million employers, very few break 1 million. There's a couple million of the 5 million that stay below a million or below. And lots of those owners have nice lifestyles. That's great. For me, I always wanted to be a bigger company, and I always kind of had a background in manufacturing. So then many companies never break 2, and they don't break 5, and they don't break 10. And I'll get into that in a minute. But so I wanted to get over a million. So I went out to look for a company to buy, and I found the company I'm talking to you at today, Dane Manufacturing. We started to pursue the acquisition of Dane, and it took about 18 months and a whole lot of time of mine. And I got it about 85% complete with no advisors. Those of you that are looking to do an acquisition, keep your lawyers.
First time too.
Yeah, keep your lawyers and your accountants the hell out of the room, and just talk to the other seller and try to get far down the road without bringing in the attorneys, unless you have a really good attorney. Most attorneys kill deals. So, right. So I got really close, brought my attorneys and my accountants in, and we kind of consummated the deal with the owner of Dane Manufacturing. Bought it. It was 1.2 million. That was 2001, right after 9/11. The bank almost didn't do the deal because of 9/11, but we got it done. My mom was our investor. That's how I got the first deal done. She came with the working capital, or the down payment, excuse me. Then the next year we broke 2 million. The year after that we broke 3, and we were on our way. And then so I 3x the company for the first time from 1 up to 3, and then I said, well, we can break 5 and we can break 10. I got the capacity to grow and change and keep getting better. What most of your listeners may or may not know is I am the problem.
Self-aware. I love it.
In my own company, I am the biggest problem because I have the veto pen. I'm the sole owner now. I can say no to anything, right? Saying yes is easy. Saying no is hard. Sometimes knowing what not to do is the hardest thing, right? So you got to be careful with your yeses. So I said we got to grow. And so we grew up to 5-6 million, got stuck a little bit there for a couple of years. And then we finally, I brought in some more salespeople to help me, split up the big accounts I had landed. And then we grew up to 10 million, and then pretty soon we got to 12. So I 3x, 3 times the growth, the second time from 3 up to 12. And, or 3 up to 9 to 10, I guess would be a better way to say it. So I said, okay, we're doing good. 1 to 3, 3 to 9, 10. We actually had grown to 12. And then I said, man, this is hard. I'm doing a lot of things at a high end level here, and I need some more help. So I brought in a president, good friend of mine, and he had an accounting background, and so he came in and joined the fight. And that's Mike, who talks in that Axial.net article as well. And Mike said, well, what do we want? So in June of right before Memorial Day of 2015, I hired Mike. So in June of that year, we, right after the 4th of July, we got back from our holiday, and we said, what are we going to do? So this is the first 30 days Mike's been working for me. And we sat down and we set kind of the course to say, I want to 3x the company again, Mike. I want to go from 10 million to 30. He's like, great. I love it. How are we going to do it? I said, through some organic growth, we're going to land some more big accounts, grow our customer base, get deeper with some of the current customers, and through some inorganic, we're going to acquire 1 and or 2 companies. Cool. So we set the path, and then every Thursday, like was chronicled in that article, we started to then meet offsite for a couple hours, so we could stay focused, not get distracted, and be, very direct in what we were trying to accomplish. So we had to work through quite a few things. We had to sell a company inside the business. We had to reorganize the factory to be able to take on more work. So reinvest all that money that when we sold that non-core division. And so it was about $750,000 we netted from that sale, and we just poured it all right back in the business. And then we reorganized the factory and started to grow from 10 up to about 13, 14. And then about a year from the goal, I'm like, how are we going to get there? We're really far.
Time's a ticking.
13, 14, 30's looking like a stretch. And I told all my friends, all my Vistage buddies, everybody.
Put it out there, right?
Put it out there. Big BHAG, an FBHAG, like all that. And they were like, "Oh, you're nuts. You're never going to do it." So anybody that says I can't do something, I cut them. I immediately put them in radio silence and cut.
Challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted. And I grabbed my iPhone and I blocked caller from then on, And then once I accomplished the goal, I unblocked the caller.
Yeah, there you go. And then post it on Facebook and tag them, right?
Tag them and say, "Hey, how do you like me now?" So we ended up, kind of having a little bit of a two-step process to the final finish line to our $32 million goal. So we landed a big client. I landed a big client with my team, and then I put my team to work on the whale. I harpooned a big whale, and that was about a $5 million growth in 18. We landed them in the summer of 17. And then we finally finished the transaction of buying Dantherm Cooling. We've been working on it for, about 4 or 5 months. It went away. We put a letter of intent out there. They took a letter of intent from a different bidder who came in over the top of us. That went away. Then in deal terminology, the deal, went in a no shop clause for 90 days with that potential buyer on their LOI. So we lost the ability to talk about it with the seller, which was fine. They wanted too much money for it. It was too high a price. So I let them go to get an education, and they did. And their numbers were heading the wrong way anyway, because the president wasn't running it very well that they had in there. They came, then in deal terminology, the deal boomeranged back to me. The president called me back and said, "Are you still interested in the company?" I said, "That depends on the price. If your seller still, thinks it's worth $6 million, then I'm not interested. Don't waste my time." No. How about asset value? I said, "Asset value is good. We can talk there. Are your assets still around $3 million? Yep. Okay, that's about the number I thought it was worth last time. I offered 4, but I thought it was really worth 3.1, 3.2. So he came to visit me in Madison. We went and had sushi. He doesn't drink, so we had ocha, green tea, and a whole bunch of sushi. He went away. We agreed on a couple of timelines and a couple of key things. And then I visited the company again, and they're in Spartanburg, South Carolina. So that began the process. We then finished that acquisition in June of 2018. So last year, 8-9 months ago, I guess. And bought the company, and that took us from our 18 million, 19 million up to 32 at the time. So, and
then you unblocked everybody on your phone.
I unblocked everybody except a few family members, if you know what I
mean. That you couldn't even resurrect those relationships at all.
Yeah. So they get to find out about it from mom.
Well, and what I'm so excited, Troy, is you said you'd done 8 acquisitions throughout this period, and that's ridiculous growth that I think a lot of people want anyways. Yeah. And so I think, how we can go with this storytelling is, you have so many war stories, and you and I were rallying around a lot of the different points, how kind of broken the whole M&A industry is, and how you learn that through unfortunate situations. Yeah. So, I don't even know what thread we want to pull first. I mean, honestly, what out of that whole growth strategy, first of all, maybe on the organic growth, and then we can kind of tie into the M&A, because I think, organic growth is always difficult for every entrepreneur. I mean, how many times in your vintage groups have you seen people just waste so much money trying to find the silver bullet of a salesperson? Yeah. So what are some of the things that you did to actually organically grow the business?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ryan. I'm really glad you asked it, because I would like to tell every entrepreneur this story, because most don't know the numbers. You are one of them. I am certainly one of them. And we self-identified on that first call together, that first couple of calls together, immediately as not only A-type personalities, but guys that aren't afraid of the phone and that can get quick rapport and can sell. And so for a very busy guy, you got into my world quickly, gained rapport, and I agreed to be on your podcast because I enjoyed talking to you. You're a very smart guy. Salesmen, here's the math for all you entrepreneurs. Write this down, put a block around, get a blank white cheap piece of paper, write this down and tape it to your wall and look at it for about 10 days in a row. Because you're not going to believe me until you look at it 10 times, 10 days in a row. And then you'll be like, damn, Troy's right. I've hired a lot of duds. Here's the math. 4% of the salespeople in America sell 92% of all goods and services. 4%, the top 96 percentile. The top 4% sellers sell 92%. So according to the IRS, there's about 25 million people that identify themselves in sales. That's everything from the Canon fax copier scanner guy who can't get a sale anymore because everything's going paperless, to the guy
that's my old world, man.
sell you a car, right? And you know all about that business, right? That was your dad's business, yours and your dad's business. And so now, of course, I have 20 printers in my company, and I got another 10 down south.
You're trying to figure out how to get rid of them, though.
Everyone's trying to figure out how to get rid of them. I still like printers, okay? I like looking at stuff on paper. But certainly it's going down. And my point really there is, of the 25 million salespeople, men and women in America that sell, 24 million confuse the market, and 1 million actually move the needle. So when you're an entrepreneur and you're one of those 96 percentile guys or gals, and you want to figure out how to find not an A personality, an top A seller, let me tell you how you find them. You have to recruit them away from a very successful job they already have and convince them that they need to come work for you. And you put no cap on their commission, no cap on their salary. And if they make twice as much money as you cheer them on the whole time. Because they will make you a lot of money if they're making twice as much money as you. The business is making all kinds of money. And you can decide whether to pull it out or to leave it in and let it grow. So don't put a cap on your top salespeople. Many people do. It's a huge mistake. Second thing, before you hire them, there's a test out there you can give them, folks. It's called Objective Management Group, OMG. Look them up. It's a couple guys that came out of IBM. IBM was known for their sales management and sales training for 50 years, 100 years. It's what made IBM Corp, Big Blue. You live in Minnesota, they're in Rochester. They still make big, supercomputers and mainframes that run our banking systems and all kinds of secure defense contracting and stuff like that. Those mini frames and mainframes, and even their big one today, I forget what it's called, Newton, I guess, or whatever. Watson. Thank you, Watson. That was the name of the founder of IBM, Watson. I should remember that. So Watson, will do a trillion calculations in a second or something. The point I want to make is OMG was two guys that came out of IBM that said there's got to be an easier way. They created a test. This test is administered online. You give it to any candidate, and then it will tell you whether that dog will hunt or not. And you can save yourself all kinds of agony when they are not a 96 percentile seller. Don't hire them. Go keep looking, and don't just slam a warm body in there. The last thing I can tell you is on selling is you have to set the pace. If you're the entrepreneur and it's your business, you never get to quit selling. You know that, Ryan. You were the main salesman for your dad's business. I'm still the main salesman for my businesses. You have to suit up not every day anymore for me, but you still got to put on the armor. You still got to go out there and do battle. You got to grab the harpoon every once in a while, get on the front of the bow and harpoon that big whale. So,
I love it. There is no silver bullet, right? I mean, like I said, like in the Vistage groups or the CEO roundtables or whatever you're in, which if the listener's not, you need to be. But how many times, like, oh yeah, I'm paying $10,000 a month for telemarketers. They set no appointments, or I had this person, they've been on my salary, they're making $100,000, and everybody's sucking off the tit, and no one's actually doing anything. It's just like you got to go do it yourself. You have to take responsibility for it.
Yeah, there's probably one more thing I would say if you want to. I'm sorry about that. I should mute that off. One more thing I would say about selling, people that sell. I've always offered a reasonable base, somewhere in that $65,000 to $85,000 range. Nobody gets a six-figure base selling for me. And then I let them go make $100,000 in commissions. Okay. So I highly incent them to sell, and I only pay them two ways. I only pay them on gross margin, and I only pay them once we get paid. And so take note, entrepreneurs, not everybody pays their bill. And so if you're always paying your salesman a commission or a salesperson a commission, I mean, no slam on the women listening on the line. I'm all about women power. I've got two girls at home that are my daughters I love very much, and I'm the product of a single mom. So I don't mean to be
Honestly, Troy, like on that note, I bet you of that million people that are kick-ass
Yeah.
salespeople, the ones that are women, I bet you they outperform the men too.
65, yeah, I bet you 650,000 of them are women, and they outperform the men 2 to 1.
I bet you you're right.
Yes, the women are the superior sex, as we know. So for sure. So the thing that I want, the other thing I want, I only pay on gross margin, and I only pay after the company is paid, and that's an important fact because you want that salesperson to uphold margin. You just don't want them to go out and sell, 100 brand new, printer, scanner, copiers at
Mhm.
basically cost, because now you're just trading dollars. You want them to
It
sell
sounds
that
like you're talking about my old
margin, right?
industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what the OMG test does is, it's called the sales profile. What the sales profile test does is it looks at 5 areas of weakness. Okay. So, you can go to their website and get these things. I'm just going to spout them off the top of memory. I've given the test to over 100 people and only 4 have passed. You're talking to one of them. The other 2 sell for me up here at Dane, and I have one that sells for me down in Dantherm. And I've given that test over the last 12 to 14 years to 100 people. I do not joke about numbers like this. I've given the test to 100 people. 4 have passed. I'm sorry,
Right in line
5
with your
passed.
numbers.
5 passed. I regret not hiring the 5th guy because he passed it higher than most of my other guys, and now he's selling for a friend of mine's business, doing really well. It wasn't the right fit at the time for us. That's my only regret, not seeing past that and just bringing Jim in here. Jim did. So 5 out of 100 have passed it, pretty close to the numbers I told you. It looks at 5 weaknesses. Their number one is their ability to handle rejection. You got to take a lot of no's before you get to a yes, Ryan. I don't know how many people you called before I said yes to do your podcast, but you probably had 20 that day, and I was your 21st call.
Troy, when I started in the copier business, it was 400 phone calls, 15 appointments, 3 proposals, and 1 sale.
Holy buckets.
Yeah, that was that every single week, man.
That's some math. That is some grinding there, man. Smiling and dialing, as we call that, right? Holy smokes.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
So yeah, you're well geared for the no. The second area of weakness you'll tend to see if you in a salesperson that doesn't perform is they're uncomfortable talking about money. In a copier sales corporate account, Ryan, you could walk in and take a $250,000 order or $1 million order for multi-site locations for Medtronic, and you had to be comfortable talking, in 4, 5, and 6-figure numbers, sometimes even 7-figure numbers, right? That contract I negotiated last summer was a 7-figure contract across 3 years. And it's the biggest sale I've ever had, but I was completely comfortable in it because I knew my math and I'd been working on 6 and 7-figure deals for a long, long time. So you got to be comfortable. It's called money tolerance. You have to have a high money tolerance. Number 3, you can't think that like a prospect or a potential customer, give them the chance to shop around. If you think like, I want to go shop at every store at the mall before I buy a pair of jeans or I buy a Valentine's gift for my sweetheart, you're not a good salesperson. You need to be decisive. Get in there, make a decision, buy the whatever pair of jeans you want to buy, and then get out. That's how I shop. So if you think it's okay for the prospect to look around and take a long time to make a decision, that's a weakness. Number 4, you have to uphold margin. When you give a quote, there's got to be 20, 25, 30, 40 points in there for your company, and you're getting a percentage of that if you're the salesperson. The more margin that you bring your company, the more you should be compensated as a salesperson. Remember that, entrepreneurs. Pay your salespeople. The more they bring the company, the more they should get. Make it proportional. Make it go up as a percentage, right? So number 5 then is the 5th area of weakness is, I gotta think about it now. Oh, this is an old term, but for the silver-haired folks on the line, it was, it's like in your mind, I'm having a conversation with myself, trying to remember the 5th thing I'm going to tell you. We talk to ourselves at about 900 words a minute, and then I talk to you at about 150 to 200. Doesn't mean I'm crazy. That's your mind talking to yourself, trying to remember, pulling its memory banks to think of my next sentence. Okay. You're not crazy. You don't have to hear voices in your head. It's called self-talk.
The monkey.
Okay. So if I don't control the self-talk in my head, the term they use in the Curlin is it's a broken record collection. If I walk into my appointment at Medtronic to sell them on a 1,000 copier bid, and I'm nervous because I really want this sale and I haven't hit my numbers for the month and my commission's down and I got to make my rent check or my mortgage, go out, and my wife or my girlfriend or my husband's on me, or I really want that new car or that new outfit, and I really, or my credit card bill's due tomorrow, and I'm thinking about all that stuff, and I'm nervous because I really want this sale. Don't think for a minute that smart woman on the other side of the table isn't picking up all your nonverbal cues you're giving off. She's going, okay, crazy boy, get the hell out of here. I ain't buying nothing from you today. And so you got to control your self-talk. You got to control what's going on in your head. You need to have a very clean, mind walking into these sales calls, and you need to do it when you get on the phone too. So,
what we used to call that, Troy? Is called it MSU, which is making shit up. So seriously, like, as we had 20 sales reps, and it'd be like, okay, so if I don't get this deal, I don't hit my quota. If I don't hit my quota, then I don't hit my bonus. If I don't hit my bonus, then I can't get the car. If I don't get the car, then I can't drive my kids to the, and then all of a sudden you're broke and you're on the streets, all within like 30 seconds.
Making shit up. That's good. Right?
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
No, it's huge, man. Cause like, I actually got multiple clients that we're working with too right now that, like, the repeatable sales division is always the hardest thing. And they think these people don't exist, or they give them house and home and equity for no reason. And it's a huge pain point in a lot of companies.
Yeah. Sales. So find yourself a top A salesperson. She's out there. She's probably frustrated selling for Hewlett Packard or, IBM, and she wants to work for a smaller, more nimble company. She doesn't want to take a 50%, backwards haircut in salary. She doesn't mind taking a little bit of a risk, but, show her how she's going to make, her 6-figure salary, 150 or 200 grand working for you, even though you're not taking that right now because you got a startup company or you've got a brand new company that, you're only taking $100,000 salary or a $70,000 salary. And it's okay if she makes 200, because now she's going to take your company from 1 million to 3 million, and believe me, there will be plenty of cake for everybody at that number. And so you'll be able to give yourself a pay raise if she hits her goals and goes and lands that big whale. So A-type sale, top, meaning like the best A salespeople pay for themselves, as do all A players in your company.
So shifting gears a little bit, Troy, like on the M&A that you went about, maybe let's just kind of like, I don't know if we can recreate that conversation we're having, but like, you were telling, you and I were talking about how kind of broken the whole thing is. So like, before we kind of go into any like specifics, or maybe if you want to, like, what are some of the big takeaways that you had throughout all the acquisitions, whether it's the advisors, deal structure, inconsistent valuations that are out there? What's your overall take on your experience that you've had?
Yeah, great questions. When I was younger, 36, so go back 20 some years, I guess I'm 54 now, so 18 years ago, I was like, man, how come transactions and deals and stuff are so gnarly, and how come, there's so much stuff I just don't know, right? So I bought this silly little book at the bookstore, Barnes and Noble, right? Go in there and I find this how to buy or sell a business, right? And it was just like this paperback book written by a business broker that was out of Minneapolis that had been, selling for like 40 years, helping people buy and sell companies. And there was just some key things in that book that really helped me understand kind of the facts. And that's how I got to be like 80 to 85% done with my deal at Dane before I brought in my accountants and lawyers, didn't realize that I wasn't done, So I had things I had to get done yet, as far as like raising my money and getting my working capital in place and getting the bank behind the deal. So maybe I wasn't 85% done. Maybe I was only 50% done looking back on it. But my point really is 80% of businesses never sell, and 80% of deals just never close because big egos are sitting in the room. And so your job, if you're trying to do a transaction, and believe me, I've bought 8 companies and sold one. And so your job is to, check your ego at the damn door and be a little bit humble if you're trying to get a deal done, or you're just going to be like all the other friends at the club or at the bar or wherever they're bragging or talking. You're just, I was talking to that guy. He wanted too damn much money for his business, and I'm like, well, what did he want for it? And why do you say it was too much? That's usually just bravado and ego talking because they couldn't submit their ego at the door and they didn't get the deal done. So they fall into that 80% of deals that never happen. Lots of people want too much money for their business. That's not a surprise. You know that, Ryan. The job of the entrepreneur that wants to get a deal done is, number one, not to overpay, but number two, to understand the psychology of that seller, right? There's always lots of room and lots of ways to be creative on a deal structure to get a deal done if both parties are truly interested in completing a transaction. So oftentimes we don't know what we don't know. And if you're dealing with an entrepreneur that started the company on the other side or took it over from his dad and grew it up big and wants to sell it now, it's his one transaction or her one transaction for the family. They aren't an expert at it either. They've been listening to their damn banker and their damn lawyer and their damn CPA way the hell too much, because those jackasses don't know how to get a deal done either, right? And
first of all, they lose a client too.
And they lose a client. They don't really want you to get the deal done. Think about it for a minute, guys and gals. That the minute that entrepreneur that's going to sells to you, you being the younger entrepreneur probably in the room, they're going to lose a client because you got your own advisors, or you live in St. Paul and that business is in Minneapolis, or you live in St. Paul and the business you're buying is in Milwaukee or Chicago or whatever, and you're going to pick it up and move it to St. Paul or to Minneapolis. And so they're not incented to have you get the deal done. So there's all kinds of things swirling around in that room. Be a student of the deal, understand the psychology of the human, understand there's an emotional connection to the business for them. Don't come in guns blazing, calling their baby ugly, calling them stupid, thinking that you can run it better than them and you can grow it quicker than them, because you need the deal to close. So number one, check your ego at the door and have some humility at the table. Number two, listen. They'll tell you what they want if you listen and take notes. And don't let any advisors in the damn room, the people I just talked about, the banker, the lawyer, the CPA, just say, hey, I just want to take you to lunch. I just want to meet with you. Get them outside the company, try to get some rapport with them, and try to spend an hour and a half to 2 hours with them and find out what they've done with the business and how they've done it. Lastly, the third thing I would say is they're not just going to sell it to you or give it to you for, to anybody. They might have their whole life invested in the business, like your dad did in your business, Ryan. And you want to sell it knowing that you're handing off you're taking your kid and you're dropping your daughter off at college, or you're dropping your kid off at kindergarten, whatever you're at in your life cycle. And you want to make sure that teacher on the other side, that entrepreneur on the other side is going to take good care of your company. Or you're in a transaction where it's a big corporation, they're buying your company, and it's a bag of money. There's different kinds of transactions. But for your audience, it's mostly like me. They're trying to buy a company, not destroy the value, either bolt it onto their current company or have a dual location. They're an insurance company in Minneapolis and they want to expand into St. Paul, or they want to expand into Eau Claire, Wisconsin, or whatever, right? They want to expand geographically. They want to expand the customer base. Maybe it's a virtual business. Maybe they don't even need a physical plant or a physical location, and they just want to, they want to expand by buying customers and having more people. Maybe it's people they need, right? They're buying the business to have more salespeople or to just do a talent acquisition. There's lots of reasons to do acquisitions, but understanding kind of that person on the other side of the table, that they want to see you treat their employees decently, right? They want to see you be a decent human being. So remember that when you're dealing with somebody that's a little bit older, and don't think for a minute that there's not opportunity there. Just kind of guard that, what your intentions are to do with the business. When he starts asking you, what are your intentions to do with the business? I'd want to know what you'd do next, Mr. Owner, because, you've been here a lot longer than me. I don't know the business as well as you do. What would you do next if you were me? Well, if I was you and I had your energy and I had, I'd go expand into St. Paul because there's lots of opportunity over there, or whatever. Listen to them. Write it down notes. Be sincere, because odds are they probably have some good ideas in those nuggets, right? So the last part I'd say on getting a transaction done is, don't think for a minute, oh my God, I don't have the money, I'm never going to get this deal done, because that's the self-talk stuff in your head. That I talked, you and I talked about this, right? Sean Aker wrote The Happiness Advantage. Darren Hardy, my CEO coach, interviewed him. I'm listening to that, working out after I did the day before I talked to you. And 25% of success is geared around intelligence and what you do with it, right? Skill and intelligence. 75% of success is your belief in yourself, your attitude, and your associations, right? Obviously, your listeners are associating with you, a winner, so they're trying to get better. They're listening to me, a winner, so their associations are already taking care of themselves. It's attitude and belief in themselves. So when you go into a transaction, just for all your listeners, I never had the money for any of my 8 transactions. Never had the money when I started to buy the company. Okay.
So you gotta have to expand on that for the listeners. Where did it come from?
I never had the money. I had faith in myself, huge belief in myself, and belief that I could convince somebody to give me the money. So it is, you can't go in with zero, but like when I'll give you the numbers on Dane. When I bought Dane Manufacturing, it was $300,000 I needed. Okay. And I had 50. So I was clearly, this is 2001 dollars. Okay. So it's not that much, that much different than today's dollars.
Right.
I was $250,000 shy of closing my deal. And I worked for 15 months to get the deal done. And I could tell the bank's getting a bit nervous. I can tell that the seller's getting a bit nervous. My CPA is getting a bit nervous. The law firm starts asking, like, where's the capital coming from? I got it handled. Don't you worry about it.
Yes.
So I had an investor, and the investor was yes, till 2 weeks before closing, and until he was a no. And folks, I want to tell you, partnerships don't work. So I'm not talking about having a partner. I'm talking about having a silent investor. It's a different kind of partnership. They have no control. They simply have an investment. They're hard to find. They usually come in form of mom or dad, or Uncle Mike. And so my mom stepped up huge and helped me close the deal. She remortgaged her house in North Minneapolis. And, I closed my deal and got the first deal done. Now, I went on to pay my mom very handsomely for that investment. We figured it out. She earned about 16% interest compounded over 15 years. So I made,
that's awesome.
Yeah, I made, 12 times 15 is 180 payments. And I kept changing the amount a little bit more not every year, but, started out as 2,500. Then I went to 3,000 so she could buy a new car. Then I went to 3,500. And then I went to 4,000. And so by the time we got done with the money stream, it was almost $600,000 to my mom, because I love my mom, and she got her $250,000 in principal back. And
that's fantastic.
Yeah, and my mom's a great lady, still around, and we're still very tight. And so, don't worry so much about the money. The money will be there if you have a huge belief in yourself. Capital will always find a good home, and so there's so much capital sloshing around right now in the market. You and I talked about this last time. Looking for a place to go, a safe investment. One of the fastest returns on an investor's money is still in the SMB, the small to medium-sized businesses. There's 4.5 million of them in America, and us entrepreneurs, we work really, really hard to make sure that business is black, so we don't have to go back to work for the man. And we'll stay up all weekend making payroll on Friday, spending all weekend trying to figure out how to make payroll happen, because we didn't have the money.
Because we got it. Because we
got it. Because checks got to clear on Monday, brother.
There is no other choice.
Those checks got to clear on Monday, or you're not going to have employees on Tuesday.
Oh, well, you can always do manual checks. I've done that before. That gives you a little bit of float.
Gives you a little bit more float. Yeah.
So I actually, to follow that whole train of thought, Troy, what other than that swooping in of your mom, what about the other transactions? Was it was it banks that were the problem? What were some of the other ways that the financing came from?
Yeah, that's a great point. So you and I talked a lot. I grew up in Wisconsin and I lived in Minneapolis, Bloomington for a long time. So I love, don't have that Packer Viking rivalry thing. I got lots of friends that are Vikings fans and Minnesota Wild fans, and I got lots of friends that are Packer fans and Blackhawk fans, and so I just see lots of shades of gray there. I love them all, right? And I always love to come to the Twin Cities, and I'm going skiing tomorrow with a bunch of my buddies from Bloomington, Jefferson, right? So at the end of the day, what I want to share with your listeners is that, don't think because one bank says no to you, that means no. That just means that bank doesn't want more of the investment that you're bringing it, right? The risk that you're bringing it. So let's say in my world, it's manufacturing companies, and I need, I've got real estate, I've got, big machinery, and I've got inventory and AR. Not every bank wants, to finance your manufacturing building, or in your case, your inventory, or in someone else's case, their software development. But there are banks out there that do. And so your job as the entrepreneur is to not be offended by one no from a bank, to keep going through all the no's until you find a maybe or a yes. And so bankers are notorious for being conservative because they really have one job.
They want their money back.
They give you this green stuff called money, and they kind of expect you to pay it back, right? So when that tight ass banker sitting across from you, or doesn't believe in your dream, or doesn't believe in your vision for the business that you want to do this acquisition, that's his issue. You need to believe in yourself, and you just need to keep shopping for banks. Okay. So that's always my encouragement to entrepreneurs. The other part about the working cap, or the money will be there once you find a deal. Oftentimes you can get the seller to finance the deal. You know this, Ryan. Don't go into the deal looking for the seller to, hold paper, as they call it in deal terms, right? To hold paper on 50% of the business. Go into the deal genuinely working hard to, find the capital, bring your own capital, leverage everything you've got, leverage everything your family's got to get your deal done, and then knowing full well you better make it work, because your mom and dad want to be paid back, and so does Uncle Mike. And Thanksgiving, it's awful tough if you don't pay back Uncle Mike or mom and dad, right?
Yeah.
So you'll work your butt off until you do that, and then they're going to come back, 5 years later, going, "Oh, honey, I knew you'd do it. I had faith in you the whole time." Know for a fact that there was times where it was dark for them. They weren't sure you were going to make it. But if they loved you, they hung in there with you. So the thing I want to share with your listeners really is that in the Midwest, specifically Minnesota and specifically Wisconsin, the bankers are the most tight ass you'll ever find in the country. So get out of Minneapolis and get out of Madison, Wisconsin, and get to more, friendlier places. Iowa, believe it or not, it's got a lot of bankers that are a lot less conservative because they already have a bunch of conservative stuff called farmland they financed, and they want to do something with, financing something else. Minneapolis, and to them, that's a diversification because they're not in Iowa with a piece of dirt, for a big farmer or a dairy farmer. Same way in Wisconsin, you get out of Wisconsin and go to Illinois. In Chicagoland, that guy's got all kinds of real estate loans in downtown Chicago. He's got a concentration at, MB Financial or Fifth Third Bank or some other big bank. And he's looking for, smaller loans in the SMB market, to do a deal. And if it's a sharp entrepreneur out of Minneapolis or out of North Dakota, he'll do the deal. They're looking to deploy capital in states and areas other than their own. And I will tell you that Minnesota and Wisconsin have some of the most tight-ass bankers I've seen. And we talked about that, Ryan, right?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. One of my clients actually just had, they just got a new bank from North Dakota, and they just did some amazing shit for him, which is pretty cool.
North Dakota's got some great banking going on right now. I've heard the same thing from a bunch of people. There's all kinds of money over in North Dakota from the people that are sitting on hundreds of millions of dollars from the natural gas and oil that's flowing out from underneath their farmland now. And they start their own bank, and now they want to put that money to work and get 5-6% return on it because they got more than they know what to do with. And so North Dakota banks are being very aggressive right now. And if you're if you're a Minnesota Bulldog or you're a Minnesota Gopher, I get the hockey rivalry with the Fighting Sioux or whatever they call themselves these days. They had to change their name, but I get the rivalry. I get the rivalry between the Wisconsin and Minnesota teams. I get it. Don't come here for banking. It's worse than Minnesota. Go over to North Dakota. Go over to Iowa. We did our last deal with an Iowa bank. They came forward with $5 million in a great package, and it's been a great relationship. I'm also shopping in Chicagoland. I would shop in other bigger banking cities. Banking metropolitan areas, right? So Minneapolis has got a lot of big banks, but man, are they conservative sometimes, right?
Interesting about this Troy, is that, whether the listeners are planning on buying or
Yeah.
selling, like, and you and I were kind of talking about this because I think, yeah, I mean, literally it's the same numbers that I rattle off all the time. I was just actually on a podcast earlier this morning, and, the 27 million companies, the 5 million, and, most of these are boomers, right? So
Yes.
the big challenge that is out there right now is that, the next generation doesn't have the capital.
Correct.
So like it's almost like if there's a listener right now that wants to sell, they should actually help find the financing for the potential buyers too,
Correct.
because there's so many willing buyers and sellers out there, but the financial mechanisms to actually help with that transaction are totally effed up right
They're a
now.
mess.
Like it doesn't actually facilitate that. So I think it's great for both sides.
Yeah, and the other thing I would tell your listeners, even though the process is sometimes long, if you get the right bank, they can make it happen. Rather, they can shorten the process to be 60 to 90 days. Don't discount the SBA. The SBA's got some decent packages. They charge a lot for their fees, and that's always been the gripe that everybody that does an SBA deal complains about. But here's what I always say to those guys and gals. Yeah, well, I'm probably going to see about a 30% rate of return on my investment in our company down in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Do I care that I paid 7% interest versus 5.5, the going rate? 1.5 points on a 30-point rate of return. I guess I'm only going to make 20.5 points on a rate of return on that small, medium-sized business. I think the return can be as high as 50 on the return on asset investment on the ROAI. So it becomes mice nuts sometimes when you look at that. Okay? So keep that in mind. Well, geez, they're going to charge me $37,000 in fees to get the deal done. Yeah, and without them, you ain't getting the deal done. And at the end of the day, earn yourself out of those fees by just going and being more profitable in the first year, because you might be able to make that up in 1 or 2 months worth of profitable sales. And then you go, good thing I own this company now. And I guess I don't mind so much that I had to pay $37,500 in SBA fees, because without the SBA, I wasn't closing the gap. I want to explain the SBA just for some potential buyers out there and some potential sellers that misunderstand it. The SBA steps in and fills the gap in the risk pool for the bank. So if I don't make it and I don't pay back the money, the SBA pays the bank back, and then they take it out of my hide for the rest of my life by garnishing my wages when I go back to work for the man. So the SBA stands in the risk gap between the entrepreneur and the bank. And so the bank loves the SBA deals because they have no risk. And so oftentimes it's okay to bring them in. You got to pay a fee because the SBA is just like the, I think it's the IRS. There's only two branches of the government that self-fund, right? The IRS and the SBA. So no, the IRS needs money. I think the SBA and one Smithsonian, they self-fund. So the SBA actually self-funds itself. In other words, they need no money from Congress to continue to run, because all the money they collect on the fees for the loans that they write and underwrite pays for the salaries of all of the workers at the SBA, the Small Business Administration, and the federal government. They're one of the only organizations in the federal government that self-funds. That's okay. That's good. And pay the fee. Be happy to own the company and go make the money and pay it back in 1 or 2 years. It's a small consolation to get access to the capital to own the company. So help the seller know that, help the buyer know that, and there's nothing wrong with it. I've done 3 SBA deals of the 8 that I've done. My last one was an SBA deal because we went from 10 to 30 million, or from 20 to 30, I should say. And we needed that risk pool to get the bank to get comfortable with it. Not because the parent company wasn't strong, because the target we were buying was so bad. Okay. So sometimes the reason to bring in the SBA is there's lots of reasons to bring them in. The other part is help the seller understand, because you're young and you're an entrepreneur and he's a boomer and he needs to sell his business, that it's okay that you bring in the SBA. He may not like them, but he may not understand it either. They stand in the middle between the bank and the risk, and they suck up all that risk. And so it doesn't mean that the borrower is a bad person because they can't get a traditional bank to say yes. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah. And and I think it's something that everybody needs to know, whether you're sellers or buyers. And I think just to our point, Troy, is that there's going to be just if you think about math, and if you got someone that's in their 30s or 40s or even in their 50s, if they've been working for the man, you can only accumulate so much savings,
Correct.
right? I mean, unless you get an inheritance or a windfall somehow,
Correct.
but that's usually businesses. So you're like, it's not usual that someone's got sitting on a bunch of capital that can just purchase a business
Correct.
for, cash. So you're going to have a financier in there. And I think, for the buyers, I was on this podcast, Trevor. Like, I'm encouraging anybody that are in the 30s and 40s, start getting prepped and start looking for these companies, because the boomers that are listening too, they need people to step up to buy these companies. So it's like, and if the SBA is gonna, fork and suck up to that risk,
Yes.
it's like, hey, why not? I mean, and the seller gets most of their cash up front.
I want to speak to both sides of it here for you. I couldn't say it. You said it so beautifully. I would simply add to that we are in unprecedented times because these boomers held on to the business too long. Last cycle, they should have sold in 2008, and they wanted to make another year's record profits in 2009, and we know what happened. The car went off the cliff. Then they had to slog back in there and work their butt off for the next 10 years to get to the top of the cycle. By the way, we're close to the top of the cycle. And they need to transfer that thing now, or they're never going to be able to enjoy their golden years. They're in their mid 60s to mid 70s, and and their kid doesn't want to buy it. They have to sell that business, and if they don't, they're going to die, and then their widow's going to have to sell that business, and she doesn't know what she's doing selling it, and or vice versa, that he doesn't know what he's doing when he's selling it, because she built it and grew it up. It was her dad's business, and she took it over, right? So again, no sexist comments coming from me. The point I want to make is that those businesses have to transfer. You got to let those entrepreneurs, those younger entrepreneurs, have control of it. And in order for that to happen, there has to be, we're in unprecedented times. There's 3 million businesses that got to transfer in the next 8 to 10 years.
It's crazy,
right? It's crazy, unprecedented times. And so it's a great time to be out. And there's all kinds of capital looking for a place to go, And so again, our government has a lot of it through the SBA. The banks have a lot to lend through private individuals. At the same time, it really comes down to
getting the deal done, right?
Have some belief in yourself, getting the deal done, and sticking in there, and just saying, yeah, I should be the owner of this business, not because I'm better than you, and I'm just because I'm ready to take the baton from you, Mr. Owner, Mrs. Owner, and I'd like to help, take care of the business and take it to the next level, or just maintain it. You don't have to tell them all that you're going to do with it, because they're not necessarily interested in hearing that. Because
right, that's totally true.
Yeah, be humble.
So as far as like your experience with kind of two things, one is advisors, like you wrote these deals, and then also deal structures. Any comments or thoughts on you and I were kind of talking about how I think I don't want to prime you too much, but I think they're like those stats that you had about salespeople. They got to have something similar about actually advisors that are worth a shit, and versus people that actually understand how this whole game works.
Yeah. So, there's so much terminology. I call it, country club talk. I don't belong to a country club, but I have plenty of friends that do. I always say I don't have to belong to the country club, because I got lots of friends that I
yeah, you can go with them.
Go with them and ride on their membership. I don't have a lot of time for pretension, so I prefer to just kind of do things and then talk about it after it's done, versus bragging on it, at the club or whatever. So I guess a few things I would like to share with your listeners is that there's so much language around deals and deal structure. For those of us that have done a lot of deals, there becomes a way of talking about it. And sometimes you don't understand those terms, and they're not necessarily on a Google, lookup, right? And so sometimes you need to get yourself around the entrepreneur that's done a few deals, or the podcast that you're putting through, Ryan. I'm sure that there's a bunch of terminology your listeners can get from just talk and listen and listening to the people you interview, like me. What I want to say is in the advisors and getting deals done and a lot of that stuff, a lot of times they're full of shit. They're just guys and gals that want to associate with the winners, and they'll waste a lot of time and or some of your money. They'll take some of your money, and they don't actually really do a lot of transactions. So one of the reasons I joined Axial.net was because that was a serious group, a serious community online that, it costs a lot of money just to join, where there's a bunch of serious cats there that are trying to get deals done and or finance deals and or sell a company, right? And so in that community was very serious players. At the same time, there's other people that are hanging on to that community that are pretty serious, but just can't afford to be in that inner circle yet, okay? So that's a great spot. There's a lot of great resources online too. My CEO coach, Darren Hardy, he's got a lot of people that subscribe to his stuff. He's got a thing he does every day. It's called Darren Daily. It's just really good, positive stuff to put into your brain. You got to watch the inputs to your brain, okay? Because if you're going to keep a positive mental attitude, a belief in yourself and some of that, you are not finding it on Fox News Channel. You're not finding it on MSNBC, Squawk Box in the morning. Turn that crap off. Quit watching TV. You want to get a deal done, quit watching TV. 92% of the crap they're selling you, all that fear they're pumping out at you on that idiot box, never happens, okay? The other 9% or 8% that's left over, the other 7% doesn't happen the way you think it's gonna, and the only 1% actually happens. So if it's, it's just fear mongering. I hate it. It's sensationalization of, somebody else got shot in downtown Minneapolis today. Yep, they did. Does that mean I shouldn't go to downtown Minneapolis to have a lunch with my potential banker? Nope. You better, if you want to get a deal done, So yeah, somebody.
How about like the advisors that you like, which no, I think you're spot on with a lot of that. How about like, so many, kind of what I see is like so many people they just turn to the first person that they trust, which they are not in the business of doing deals, right? So whether it's and sellers more so than, because buyers, they can kind of fumble their way through stuff because there's not as much risk on the table other than, losing a deal. But, these sellers turn to like their first advisor, CPA, banker, attorney, and they're not in this business. And then there's all this jargon that gets thrown on that the people think it. And I just don't know what you've experienced over all the 8 deals you've done.
Yeah. Of the 8 deals I've done, there's 100 I haven't done. Right. Because of the jargon and the stuff you're talking about, the jackasses in the business that are walking around acting like they know what they're talking about, convincing the seller to, I'll tell you about one deal I didn't get done. I wouldn't say I regret it. It just didn't happen. It was a good deal and I would have been great for that business. So it was one of my CEO peers in Vistage. He was the other alpha male in the room. I was the young alpha male in the room, and he and I always had the best advice for the other 14 people, that were sitting around in our business group, right? So we'd always give the hard advice to the business owners in the Vistage group. And I'll leave his company's name off, and I'll just call him Jim. Okay, even though so Jim was going to sell me his business after having a very successful run with it. I had really nice EBITDA. Jim was going to give me the startup, the down payment. I always say working up the down payment, and it was a no money down deal on a $12 million. I'm sorry, it was in sales. It was about a $15 to $16 million company, 2004, 2005 numbers. So it's about a $15 to $16 million company. It had 3 divisions. It was an old line company, but I could have grown that thing a lot. And it was been around for 135 years. It was in a small rural town, not too far from where I live. And Jim liked me a lot and thought I was a pretty sharp guy. His CFO, however, was going to become one of my new partners. So the money that Jim was leaving he was leaving $2 million in the deal, and he was going to hold the real estate, and he wanted $12 million for it. So I spent about $40,000 in legal and CPA with my good deal lawyer and my good deal CPA writing it up. And we were really close to getting a deal done. And at the last minute, his CFO convinced him not to sell it to me, because the CFO didn't like the fact that I was only giving him 2.5% equity for the $500,000 that Jim was leaving in for him, not 5%. He thought I should give him 5%, and I should have 4 partners in the business that had 5% equity stake. And the problem with that is now all of a sudden those 4 guys, you got to have 81% or 82% in Wisconsin state law to have majority. Now those guys get preferential treatment because I don't have a majority position. So it created all kinds of legal challenges for me. So instead of just giving them each 4, I said, you get 2.5 because we're going to grow this thing, and that's going to still be worth $1 million to you. And you didn't put the $500,000 in, Jim did. So you should be happy with that. You're going to all walk away millionaires. and you've just been the CFO here for 4 years, so be happy Jim's leaving $500,000 in for you. And he queered the deal. The story I tell you there is there's always influencers around the sellers. And sometimes they're inside the company. Sometimes they're their country club buddy. Sometimes they're their banker, and they're outside the business. And so you'll see the influencers, they're hanging around the king, and they're always, chirping in his ear or her ear, the queen's ear. And they're like the jesters in the old medieval times in the court, right? So you're coming before the king or the queen, and you're trying to, bow down and get favor with them to have them sell you their business. And here's their jester in their ear. They like you or they don't like you. They got their own motivations, right? So,
well, and I was going to say, Troy, to interject for a second. The sellers need to be aware, because that whether it's the advisors that could lose a big client or people like the CFO, if you don't do the due diligence to line everybody's motives up together, the seller has to be aware of what lens everybody's looking at this through, because everybody's got different motives, no matter how good of people they are.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't think for a minute that everybody at the table doesn't have a motive. Everyone's got an ulterior motive, including the seller, including the buyer, including the CPAs at the table, right? So what I would suggest to your listeners that are serious about getting a deal done, there are some decent books out there, not President Trump's The Art of the Deal, but there are some decent books out there that speak to, small to medium-sized business transactions. You got to look for them. And, they talk about, the opportunity for these large businesses to transact. A couple of books I'd recommend for your entrepreneurs is, Darren Hardy, The Compound Effect, and Darren Hardy's The Entrepreneur's Roller Coaster. ER is probably one of my favorite all-time books. And I work with Darren. I listen to all of his podcasts all the time. He's in my ear all the time. It's my positive stuff. I feed my brain, and I go to his, seminars, and I invest in myself. The last thing I'd share is invest in yourself. Darren taught me that a long time ago. You need to be investing about 10% of your salary every year in yourself. So if you're making 60 grand, you find $6,000 and you don't buy the new car. You invest it in yourself. And that's in your clothes, your seminars, your learning and whatnot. You find 10% and invest it back in yourself. And so I started doing that about 5-6 years ago when I heard it from Darren. Jim Rohn taught Darren that, and Darren's been doing that for a long, long time. Darren's quite successful, and I would say it's helped me immensely.
I love it. And one small story as we're wrapping up here is I going back to your sales and everything, and what you just said just totally brought me back. I watched Harvey McKay speak right when I had started selling on the streets after college. Nice. And broke as a joke. I'm driving a shitty Honda, and I go to his seminar, and of course there's, this is literally before the
internet. Yeah.
And then I'm broke, and like it's $150 for his damn DVDs or whatever it was. And so I bought him, and I was traveling around in the mobile university, and there was, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? And then all of a sudden there's this one CD that, because I had put all 6 in my, the CD exchanger. And then there's one that is, I love myself. I love myself. I love myself. And you do that right as you're walking. Oh, just total head games, man. It's like you versus your 6 inches between your ears. It's
absolutely. Control that self-talk in your sales call. So, Darren's Entrepreneur Roller Coaster, the Entrepreneur Roller Coaster, it's a bit of a tongue tire, is a great book. And it really talks to the challenges we face as entrepreneurs, and, continuing to feed yourself all that positive reinforcement for your mind, because the world's a tough place. It'll beat you down, And then he's got his Darren Daily thing that he does every day, which is just awesome, right? He's got a nice community of people, similar to what you're trying to do, Ryan, to create this community of entrepreneurs. I think you guys complement each other. I don't think you compete. What you do is very different than what Darren does, but they're very complementary in the trying to impact people for better, right? So as you find these young entrepreneurs or older, they've got to be young at heart is really what I say. As the 70-year-old has to sell the business to the 50-year-old. Many successful entrepreneurs don't become entrepreneurs till mid 40s to early 50s sometimes, right? Mm-hmm. You don't have to be 25 to be an entrepreneur. You could be 45 listening to this. I started my first company at 30, but that was because I was, let go. I got let go from my last company. So I wasn't going back to work for the man. And so, but that's not everyone's story.
Once you go black, you never go black, or you never go back, or whatever.
Go black or you're going back was my say. Go black or you're going back was my say. Yes. Black meaning, money.
Right. Yeah.
Not meaning anything racial.
In the black.
Yeah,
Retained earnings.
Yeah, in the black or you're going back was what was. Thank you. In the black or you're going back was the actual saying I had. In the black or you're going back. Oh, boy. Yeah. And so then you just, that feeds on itself every day, right? And so just be careful what you put in your mind.
So if there's one thing you want to highlight that we talked about, or you want to, something that we didn't touch on, and leave the listeners with, what would it be?
I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're trying to do. I appreciate your mission. I think sometimes in life, you have to remember, so my mantra is from Darren Hardy, right? Grow, impact, and excellence. Growth, impact, and excellence are my kind of 3 core values I live my life by, right? I want to grow as a human. I want to help other people around me grow. I want the companies I work with to grow. I want my customers to grow so I can grow with them. Impact, you want to impact people in a positive way. Every job you provide as an entrepreneur, I don't care if you provide your first job and you're now an employer, be proud of that fact, okay? Because you created a job. You create a job, you create 2 jobs. Each one of those jobs impacts 4 people. 4 people are impacted by every job. And so think about that. You create 1 job, you just impacted 4 people. You get to run a company of 10 people. Don't think you're small. You're impacting 40 people's lives, okay? Remember that 4 multiplier. It's a big number. And people go, well, I'm single. I live at home. And I remind my single engineer that she is impacting 4 people if she loses her job. It's like, your boyfriend's going to be impacted. You'll be living in his house. Your mom and dad are going to be impacted. And because you're going to be asking them for money.
You got kids. Payments.
And who else? Your sister? Yeah, you're right. I guess I would impact 4 people. Yeah. Every job impacts 4 people or more. That's the average. Okay. The last thing is excellence. No matter what you do, if you're working for the man and you're trying to become an entrepreneur, you owe that person who gave you that job a solid day's wage. You take into heart what Andrew Carnegie said, which is I can always judge the success of where a man or a woman is going to be, not by what they do from during the working hours from 8 to 5 or 7 to 5 in the day. It's what they do from 5 to 10 at night when they're not under the employ of another man or another woman. So don't waste your time. You only got one big spin around this world one time. Don't waste time. Time is a precious commodity. You only have a little bit of it, right? So what you do from 5 to 10 at night on a Wednesday night, maybe you're out, in Dart League, maybe you're, shooting pool, maybe you're going bowling, maybe you're drinking beer with your buddies, watching Thursday night football. That's okay once in a while. Don't make that your habit. Don't make that what you do every Thursday night. Because if you want to get ahead in life, you have to take advantage of those hours, especially if you want to be your own entrepreneur. I used to work crazy hours so that I could sit here and talk to you today. Do what others aren't going to do today so you can be like nobody else tomorrow, kind of Dave Ramsey, right? And so those are my thoughts I'd share with your listeners.
What is the best way to get in touch with you?
They can reach me if they have questions, they want to reach me. They can find me on LinkedIn. They can find me, just Google Troy Berg, Troy F. Berg. You'll see all kinds of articles, different things I've done over the years. But Troy F. Berg, I'm at Dane Manufacturing, is one company I own. I own 2 other companies, but I don't like to be known as the owner. I like to be known as kind of head coach, right? But you find me on LinkedIn, just Google my name and there'll be 10 hits on page 1. Troy F. Berg. I live in Madison, Wisconsin. I'd love to hear from your listeners. I almost always take a call from a budding entrepreneur. And, that's part of giving back, right? I had people help me when I was trying to figure life out. And so if I can help your listeners in any way, just have them reach out to me directly. And I'd be happy to talk to them and schedule some time to, get their head straight about something.
Troy, thanks so much for coming on the show. I had a blast.
Ryan, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. All the best.